But first, a Fox News alert: uncertainty in Ukraine. Who's in charge? What is next for this country? Here's a look now at Independence Square in Kiev. Several developments overnight. Ukraine's parliament voting to appoint a new leader following President Yanukovych's decision to flee, showing, though, no signs of voluntarily giving up power. Colonel Oliver North, Democratic Senator Bob Casey, and GOP Congressman Chris Smith all weigh in live. But first, we begin with Amy Kellogg, who is live in Moscow. Hello, Amy.
Hi, Shannon. Well, of course, the question now is, will former President Yanukovych go quietly, and will the other regions of the country, particularly in the east, fall in line behind this new provisional government? There are all sorts of things going on, all sorts of events in other parts of the country that are not getting as much attention as what's happening in the capital, Shannon. For example, today in Sevastopol, in Crimea, where there is a Russian naval base, people got together, 20,000 in the main square. They said they don't trust anyone anymore. They elected a new mayor, a Russian, and they said they will create their own protection force if need be. Now, meanwhile, the humiliation just keeps piling on for Viktor Yanukovych, president until yesterday, and to his mind, still president. The state has reappropriated the luxury villa he had outside Kiev, a villa he reportedly always kept quiet from his people, whose average salary is $500 a month. It has become a mecca for gawkers, and according to Ukrainian press reports, some of the exotic animals he kept have died of stress. As to the man himself, he is still in hiding. He had said he wanted to tour the eastern Ukraine and shore up his support base there to fight to keep the country from splitting up, but it is hard to imagine in the current circumstances that he will do that. Yulia Tymoshenko, a divisive figure in Ukraine but loved by many, gathered massive crowds last night on Independence Square, which is also called Maidan, which has come to be the term most commonly used for the group that wanted Yanukovych out. She told the protesters they should stay on the square until things are definitively resolved. Meanwhile, another Russian symbol vandalized in Ukraine today. This statue, a monument to the KGB, smashed and graffitied. And finally, Shannon, about world leaders and what they are saying and doing about the situation. The EU's foreign policy chief, Catherine Ashton, she's headed to Kiev tomorrow to talk to people, to try to get a sense of how this is going to develop and offer whatever help she can. William Burns, the number 2 in the State Department, is supposed to be heading to Kiev this week. And Sergei Lavrov, the foreign minister here in Moscow, is saying yet again that he is very concerned that the opposition camp is not keeping up their part of the deal that was struck just 2 days ago with Yanukovych for a sort of gradual transition from power. Lavrov, again, concerned that this is going a way that Russia is not very happy about. Shannon.
All right, Amy Kellogg live in Moscow. Thank you, Amy. Congressman Chris Smith, a New Jersey Republican who serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee and has spent time in Ukraine, joins us now with some perspective. Congressman, thank you for coming in today. There's a lot of concern today about, obviously, there's instability in these days following Yanukovych's decision to flee. But there's a lot of talk about the potential that Ukraine would break apart into western and eastern portions that are some concerned with aligning with Russia, staying aligned with Russia, others more about aligning with the EU. Where do you see this going, and what's critical in the next few days?
Well, I think it's very critical that the world, and that would include Russia, the European Union has taken a very decisive lead in this entire crisis. The 3 foreign ministers, as you know, including Foreign Minister Sikorski of Poland, help hammer out the 6-point deal with the opposition and Yanukovych that has led to the end of the violence that was occurring on independence on the Maidan. So we have a situation now where it is very fragile. There are other, as your correspondent just pointed out, other places like in the Crimea, which is a hot spot. I was actually in the Republic of Georgia when a week after the Russians rolled into Abkhazia and into South Ossetia under a very similar, but the parallels they're not totally there, where individuals said, we want to be aligned with Russia. And Crimea, that peninsula in the southern part of Ukraine, is a very dangerous place in terms of volatility right now. And I'm very concerned that if we don't backstop the United States, that we work closely with the Russians which is a paradox, but we need to be making sure that everybody is on that same page, implement the 6-point agreement, do so robustly, and ensure that what was a democracy of sorts matriculates into a robust democracy and a very real one. The May 25th elections are crucial. I hope to be part of the observation team. And there should be observers from all over the world, and there will be, to make sure it's free, fair, and the Ukrainians themselves get to pick who it is that will lead them going forward. We have an interim president, obviously, right now, but it's really up to the people to decide with the ballots who will lead them going forward.
And there have been allegations in the past that there has been tinkering
Sure.
with the election,
well,
so it'll be critical to have people like yourself and others
Shannon, in the
watch.
2012 elections for Parliament, they were not free and fair. There were all kinds of irregularities. But ironically, the election in 2010 that brought Yanukovych to power, which he won with some 48-49% of the vote, against Tymoshenko, who's now on the Independence Square speaking out, was judged to be free and fair. But then the deterioration started. The hijacking of the Constitution from 2004, which the agreement says go back to it.
Into practice,
Curb the powers of the president, further vest those powers in a prime minister, and again, give the country back to the people because it has been hijacked.
I want to give your reaction to something that's just crossing the wires here. This is attributable to Reuters, talking about the Russian foreign minister, and you've talked about
Lavrov.
We have a very complicated relationship, but critical that the U.S. works together with Russia and others on this. The foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, telling U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry today, apparently in a phone call, that opponents of Yanukovych are failing to abide by a peace deal they signed on Friday. And he's saying that, the deal isn't being upheld by the opponents. Well,
I think that's probably premature at best. I mean, the deal calls for an accountability, another amnesty for those who are on the square in the Independence area. But, it's too soon to say whether or not the 6 points are being faithfully adhered to. But it does beg the question, the reset, much ballyhooed by the Obama administration, has been an unmitigated failure. But, hope springs eternal in my mind, and the minds of many. This is an opportunity for President Obama himself to engage Putin in a way that is meaningful and not dismissive, not political in the sense of who cares, what the polls say. Let's get that dialogue going. The fact that Secretary Burns, who is a very distinguished and accomplished former ambassador to Russia, is heading to Kiev, I think is a good sign. But we have not done what we could have done over the last 5 years with regards to our relationship with Russia and Syria, Iran, and a whole host of other problems that maybe couldn't have been solved, but they could have been mitigated with the right kind of relationship with the Kremlin and of course, with Putin himself.
A big moment for the Ukrainian people and so much at stake, and we wait to hear more from the White House as well. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us
Shannon,
today.
thank you very much.
Good to see you.